Today, I'm going to talk about the latest entry into the indie animated industry, Port by the Sea, available for free to watch here on YouTube. Go watch it for yourself if you already know you want to, but be prepared for spoilers if not, because I want to talk about the interesting lore that the show sets up, and its real-life inspirations, of course. Port by the Sea focuses on two characters named Port and Umi, sailing across a very island adventure-themed world. Their story opens with a supposed fable from their world about a powerful god who tried to flood the earth, but was imprisoned by three other gods who created the moon. Following this, we see Port and Umi on their boat. Port, of course, is a reference to a port for a boat, and Umi is actually Japanese for ocean, so the title of the show, Port by the Sea, or rather Port by Umi, is a play on their names. Immediately, we see that this is a world of danger, with there being a sea monster that the two are fishing before it wrecks their boat. This leaves them on an island where we see magical talking animal humanoids are quite the norm, as well as humans like Port and Umi. Port and Umi, in an attempt to get their boat fixed, try to help the local boatman find his lost Bonnie, who they believe to be the wife they only see in photos. When asking around about Bonnie, the two end up realizing that Bonnie disappeared the day of a disastrous event called the Shattering. The Shattering refers to a recent event where the moon itself was shattered, and its pieces scattered all over the earth. Port himself has a compass that points towards the nearest large piece of the shattered moon and has taken it on himself to collect them all. He explains when talking to his pet crab, Jolly Roger, that Umi thinks there's no point to collecting all of these pieces, and Port is starting to believe her. The reason he believes her is because after talking to everyone in town about what may have happened to Bonnie, they all talk about how things have just felt wrong or even disastrous since the moon shattered, with at least one shattered piece affecting all of their lives. Port blames himself for this and indicates that it is his fault that the moon is shattered, though we don't exactly know how he did this yet. The episode ends with the sea monster they were chasing before coming to the island, where we can see that a piece of the shattered moon has been lodged in its skin. Port is able to get the moon piece out of its skin with the help of Jolly Roger, and it transforms back into a small fish that was seen in the photo with the man who missed his Bonnie. From here, Port and Umi realize that Bonnie was the pet fish of this man and his wife was simply upstairs the first time they had visited, not dead. On the night of the shatter, a piece of the moon had lodged itself in the pet fish, turning it to a sea monster, from which point it was able to escape into the ocean. This means that all over the world there are cool giant monsters to fight, and probably all sorts of magical mayhem that the moon pieces have caused, as they were created by the gods, as elaborated on in the opening with their mythological sequence. Now, Helluva has sort of become the most overt example of the tendency for animation, and particularly indie animation, to lean into deep mythological themes. In many ways, Helluva is one of the most surface-level uses of mythology and esoterica, simply because it uses the direct names of the most well-known demons and angels in Western religions. However, Helluva is unique in how it recasts those characters in order to do commentary on Earth and some eerie esoteric interpretations of what our futures may be. But Port by the Sea instead recast the ideas of the mythologies as a whole into a sort of synthesis mythology in this new world. This new mythology is built off of ours, but it uses key terms and ideas from different systems in order to seemingly shed light on existing esoteric stories. The fable within Port of the Sea starts with four great gods known as Titans, who each made a race in their own image. These four titans seem to resemble one human woman, a serpent-like dragon, a pelican bird, and a horned tentacle monster. One day, the last titan, named Tiamat, decides to claim dominion over all life by drowning it in his ocean. The other three titans decide to sacrifice themselves, making the moon to create a prison for Tiamat. The pelican appears to be the sacrifice to become the moon, with the serpent and the human being left behind to act as sort of chains for Tiamat. The fable ends posing the question of what would happen if the moon were shattered, showing the image of the moon breaking apart, its pieces infecting wild animals, and the titan Tiamat being set free. Port by the Sea then seems to be about Port trying to restore the moon so that Tiamat does not flood the earth again, with the website noting that Tiamat is waiting for the last part of his seal to be broken, as part of the moon is still in place, as we can see. Now, the term Titan comes from Greek mythology and was used to refer to an earlier generation of gods than those who were worshipped by the Greeks at that time. The Titans were the 12 children of the earth and sky, but they were eventually defeated by their own children, the Olympians, led by Zeus. The term Titan thus has become popular for shows like Port of the Sea to use in order to refer to not just a god, but a god of antiquity, a god who is no longer worshipped by the people because of the changing of the time, figures who are essentially considered forgotten or even, as the show suggests, just a fable. Now, in Babylonian mythology, Tiamat is the name of the goddess of primordial saltwater and chaos. Tiamat here is the mother of the younger gods, her husband being the god of freshwater. Like the Titans, Apsu, the god of freshwater, and Tiamat, the goddess of the saltwater and chaos, are defeated by their children, after Apsu decides to destroy them. The younger gods, led by Enki, lead a battle against Apsu, and Tiamat then tries to kill them in her rage, only to be defeated as well. These stories, like much of ancient mythology, are largely tied to the idea of a great flood and a war between two groups of deities that happened around that time. In the Babylonian myth, this story of Tiamat being defeated by her children is not much different than the story of the Titans being defeated by the Olympians. Likewise, the Greeks had the myth of Atlantis, which had essentially recontextualized the story of the Titans and Olympians to portray the Titans in a more positive and even human light. In Plato's text of Atlantis, the story of Titans and Olympians plays out in more human terms, with the Atlanteans being descended from Poseidon, the god of the sea, but elsewise being a very human group. After they succumb to sin, their home is destroyed, flooded in the sea, and the remainder of these people then attack the people of Athens, who end up defeating those last Atlanteans. These stories of Atlantis were written by Plato in 400 BC and were largely meant to elaborate on the stories of the Titans from the works of Hesiod's Theogony from about 400 years earlier. Hesiod's Theogony told the story of the conflict between the Titans and the Olympians, where the Olympians were victorious. However, a remnant of the ancient gods came after them again. This was the god Typhon, who was known as the child of the earth, like the Titans were, but instead of Typhon's father being from the sky like the Titans, Typhon's father was Tartarus, the underworld of torture. Typhon was a many-headed serpent who symbolized a sort of never-ending return of an ancient tribe, as one head is cut off, but there appears to always be more. Typhon and the Titans are from the same generation and partially related to each other, both being a child of the earth, and both are from a time before a great flood, as Plato's accounts detail, as well as other myths around the world. Tiamat thus, in Port of the Sea, takes on a bit of all of that history, having various names and references to these different cultures in an attempt to show how they connect and what their real story is. The other Titans in Port by the Sea thus represent the other tribes of man, as ultimately the different generations of gods in the ancient texts were not about which humans had been around the longest really, but which ones had risen to power first, which ones had become Titans among the wandering tribes of humans. In the show, there is no need to focus on the intergenerational aspect, and instead, the Titans are all presented as equals, with the other three being able to sacrifice themselves in order to defeat Tiamat. This is reflected in the show, with each of the Titans being said to be the creator of their own mortal lines. The first Titan seems to be the creator of humans, though other mammalian species exist that we might think of as being created by this Titan as well, as the humanoid Titan also seems to have a sort of cat-like head, and we meet a talking friendly tiger later in the pilot. Then there is the Pelican Titan, who would not just be the creator of pelicans, but of all the birds in the show. We see with the seagulls that they exist as wild animals, but on the island that Port and Umi visit, we also see that there are sentient birds, just as there appear to be sentient versions of each of the four Titans. The third Titan, the dragon and Tiamat, are where things get a bit confusing. The dragon doesn't seem anti-water, despite Tiamat being the water-themed Titan, and the serpent or dragon that we see in the fable part of the story seems to resemble the version of the fish Bonnie that becomes the sea monster. This would indicate that the dragon is the creator of fish and perhaps of sentient fish peoples, perhaps the race of imps that we see later on the island. Then there is Ankle, the name of the gravekeeper, who is so clearly not human. In addition to floating around and acting all dark, he has the crazy tentacles, and I have to imagine that he is either a descendant of Tiamat, his people, or even just the part of Tiamat that has been released now that the moon has shattered. The return of Tiamat in this world is bound to be very interesting, and I'm curious to see how this could play out over the course of the show. Thus far, the pilot has reached 400,000 views, which is quite a bit, but in the recent flood of indie animated series, it can be hard to get the money needed to produce a second episode, let alone a full season. And for those of you who saw my Magical Girl Garnet Heart pilot on my personal channel, you know I'm talking from experience. Hopefully, this show and really all of these shows can find a way to keep going, and if you do like these shows, consider donating to them. Port by the Sea has a load of potential with an experienced crew, with the creator once having worked on Rooster Teeth from what I understand, and there's endless potential to where the show could go. Click the video on the left to go watch the episode now, and if you like it, consider donating. And don't forget to subscribe here for more videos about new indie pilots and shows as a whole. See you guys next time!